In part 1, we met Kenji, a man whose life was defined by open doors, backup plans, escape routes, mental exits, until circumstance closed those doors and something shifted. The samurai of feudal Japan understood this 4 centuries ago. Strength doesn't come from keeping options open. It comes from closing the right doors and standing still in the space that remains. But here's what we didn't answer. How do you actually do this? How do you choose which doors to close? And what happens when you do? That's what we're exploring today. Chapter 5. No escape is not no choice. First, let's clear something up. The samurai didn't confuse no escape with mindless obedience. They didn't trap themselves in bad situations and call it discipline. The decision to remove retreat was made consciously, deliberately, before action. This is critical. No escape isn't about trapping yourself. It's about choosing a direction so fully that alternatives no longer drain your energy. There's a classical model of mastery called shuhari, used in traditional Japanese arts and martial training. 3 stages. Shu, obey the rules. Ha, bend the rules. Ri, transcend the rules. Freedom comes at stage 3, but you cannot skip to it. You must submit to the form first. Kenji's realization. Kenji realized something. His constant desire for flexibility had kept him permanently stuck in stage 1, the beginner stage, not because he lacked skill, because he'd never submitted himself to any form long enough to be shaped by it. He kept 1 foot out the door, always ready to pivot, always preserving his options. It felt like freedom. It was actually paralysis. When he finally closed certain doors, deliberately, not by force, but by conscious choice, he experienced something unfamiliar. Calm. Not the calm of comfort, the calm of alignment. His actions and identity finally pointing in the same direction. Chapter 6. The elimination of inner negotiation. Here's one of the most powerful aspects of this discipline. It eliminates internal debate. Samurai trained to act without hesitation. Why? Because in committed combat, a duel, a sworn battle, hesitation created openings. Openings meant death. This wasn't about all warfare. Strategic retreat was part of military tactics. But once a samurai committed to a specific engagement, once an oath was made, that commitment became absolute. In modern life, hesitation takes a different form. Endless internal conversations. Should I start? Should I continue? Should I endure? Is this really the right path? What if there's something better? The mind loops on these questions constantly, and every loop drains energy. The end of negotiation. Kenji noticed how often he argued with himself, whether to begin the work, whether to push through discomfort, whether today was the right day, or if tomorrow would be better. Once he removed escape, once the door was genuinely closed, those conversations became irrelevant. There was nothing to decide. The action had already been chosen. The path had been committed to. This didn't make life easier. It made it simpler. Effort remained. Difficulty remained. But friction decreased. His mind stopped wasting energy, imagining alternatives, and redirected it toward execution. Life crystallized. Chapter 7. Start small. Now you might be thinking, this sounds extreme. Close doors? Remove all options? That's too much. And you're right, it would be. But the discipline of no escape doesn't begin with grand vows or life-altering decisions. It begins with one small, immovable action. Traditional samurai training emphasized endless repetition of basic forms long after they were mastered. Why? not to improve the technique, to reinforce identity. Every repetition was a message to themselves. I am someone who does this, regardless of how I feel, regardless of conditions. Kenji adopted this principle quietly. One daily practice, one commitment that could not be renegotiated based on mood, circumstances, or how he felt that morning. The resistance was intense. His mind searched for loopholes. Just today, I'll skip it. I'm tired. I'll do double tomorrow. This doesn't really matter. I can start fresh next week. The excuses were creative, compelling, reasonable, but he'd closed that door. The practice was non-negotiable. Over time, resistance faded. Not because it got easier, because his identity shifted. Each completed action reinforced a subtle message. Retreat is not part of who I am. This accumulated slowly, but it was durable. Unlike motivation, it didn't depend on emotion. Chapter 8. Presence under pressure. In Zen philosophy, presence isn't a technique you practice, it's a consequence of commitment. When escape genuinely disappears, your mind has no future scenario to retreat into. It must remain where your body is. The samurai cultivated this state deliberately. They called it zanshin, remaining mind, sustained awareness, attention that doesn't waver before, during, or after action. This wasn't just meditation. It was a mental state born from total commitment. Kenji experienced this not as some spiritual revelation, but as an absence, the absence of mental noise. He still felt pressure. Difficulties still existed. Projects were still hard. Mornings were still difficult. But he was no longer divided. His attention stopped leaking into imagined exits and returned to the task at hand, to the conversation in front of him, to the work on his screen. He became present not because he practiced mindfulness, but because he had nowhere else to be. Chapter 9. The Quiet Transformation. Now, the most significant change wasn't external. Kenji's life didn't suddenly become impressive. He didn't get promoted. He didn't transform into some hyper-disciplined machine. What changed was simpler. He trusted his own word. When he decided something, he followed through. When he said he would do it, he did it. No negotiation, no maybe tomorrow. Done. This trust created a quiet strength. He spoke less about his plans. He explained himself less. He stopped seeking constant reassurance. Why? Because his actions provided evidence to himself daily. In Bushido philosophy, honor wasn't about reputation. It was about alignment between belief and behavior. Kenji had unknowingly stepped into this ancient understanding of integrity, and it changed how he moved through the world. Chapter 10. Choose your battlefield. Now here's what's important to understand. The discipline of no escape does not mean never changing course. It doesn't mean committing to everything forever. Samurai chose their battles very carefully. Very carefully. They evaluated terrain, assessed their skills, considered timing. Strategic thinking was essential. But once a specific commitment was made, once they entered a duel, once they swore an oath, that commitment became absolute. In modern life, the mistake modern people make, the mistake Kenji made for years, is confusing endless choice with wisdom. We think keeping all options open is intelligent, strategic, sophisticated. It's not. It's exhausting. You are not required to close every door in your life, only the ones that drain your strength. The modern practice. So, here's what this looks like in practice. Choose one path, worthy of commitment, one area of your life where you're willing to remove retreat. Maybe it's a relationship you've been half in on. Maybe it's a skill you've been sort of learning for years. Maybe it's a business you keep threatening to start but never fully commit to. Choose it, then close the other doors. Not forever, not dramatically, just for now, for this committed period. Remove the backup plan. Delete the escape fantasy. Stop maintaining the exit route and watch what happens. When escape disappears, fear loses leverage. It can't threaten you with the alternative anymore because there is no alternative. When fear loses leverage, something emerges in its place. Presence. This isn't a dramatic transformation. It's a quiet one, almost invisible from the outside. But you'll feel it in the quality of your attention, in the depth of your engagement, in the way you stop fragmenting yourself across imagined futures. The ancient truth. The samurai understood this 4 centuries ago. Modern life has changed the battlefield. We don't face swords anymore. We face choices, infinite choices, paralyzing choices. But the human mind hasn't changed. What worked then works now. Not because it's ancient, because its true strength isn't built by keeping options open, it's built by closing the right doors and standing still in the space that remains final call to action. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready right now. Think of one commitment you've been negotiating with yourself about. One door you know you should close. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, start small. One daily practice. Part 2 ends here, but your practice begins now. Subscribe to stay on the path, and until next time, choose your door.